up?
They call me Comrade. I'm from, I started off at Occupy Houston. And after 2 weeks of there, the inexperienced youth of Houston forced me to leave for a more experienced area, such as Occupy Austin. But as soon as I got to Occupy Austin, I realized it had turned into an insane asylum. Their more experienced activists and revolutionaries were forced out by problematic non-participants within the homeless population. You know, just a bunch of whacked out crack addicts and meth addicts were just totally overpopulating the place. The cops had to be called out at least 2 to 3 times a night. There were fights breaking out left and right. A guy pulled out a knife on one of our food table people. And so then I dropped everything. You know, I was working in logistics on internal communications and keeping the movement moving forward. And I dropped all of that to start forming a fire watchers team, or a peacekeepers team as most people know it. And the strategy that I drafted to deal with these people was to move into the problematic zones, which were the mezzanine balcony, you know, some of the other darker unlit areas. And we were going to move into those areas and set up work operations like you see over here at the gazebo.
Yeah.
Like you see over here at the IT area. You notice you can't just go over there and start smoking crack. There's like 24/7 operations going on over there. So we were going to drop IT operations and work group meetings into the mezzanine area. And that would force them out into the open. And eventually just make them run off. But after we drafted the strategy, we had to meet with City Hall to see if it was legal for us to move into these areas. And once we got approval, one of our members kept meeting with them and talking with them on their own, further developing the strategy without consulting with me or any of the other members of Occupy Austin. And then on cue, on October 29th, after the meetings were finished with the police chief and whoever it was, they came out with a memo. It wasn't even law yet. It was just a memo from City Hall stating where we could sleep, which they focused on the mezzanine area, which is what was strange to me, because my strategy focused on the mezzanine area.
Right.
And they said there was no sleeping on the mezzanine area, and then they said the sidewalk was now the mezzanine. Everything was the mezzanine.
Right.
They tried to tell us where we could set up operations at, where we could sleep, which was only the step area, how long we could have the food table out, and we pretty much took the stance like, this is a fucking occupation. You don't tell us what to do. You come down, you get on stack during our General Assembly, and we'll negotiate it. But if you're going to sit here and try and tell us what to do, you're going to have to come out here and arrest us. And that 62 police officers came out October 30th at midnight and were more than happy to oblige us on that request. And we had 3 different waves of arrest. Wave 1 were the ones that were making the stand. We had protected and guarded the food table, and we had encircled it, and so they came through and they started picking us off one by one by one by one. I don't have the exact count of who was arrested in Wave 1. They weren't issuing numbers yet. Wave 2 was at 2 a.m. the same night. They had power washing scheduled. And given what had just happened, they were too afraid to leave. They thought if they left and then tried to come back, they would institute more legislation. So even more of our members stayed and squatted the steps so they couldn't move in for the power cleaning, then they got arrested. Then there was Wave 3 about half an hour later, which they just went through and snatched people. It was just straight kidnappings. Like anybody that was being outspoken, like even a former, or a veteran of the armed forces got arrested because he was trying to keep people calm. You know, he was telling people, hey, look, you know, don't be outspoken right now, you know, put your signs down, they're gonna hurt you need to be calm right now. And so they arrested him. And then my best friend, I'm a communist, my best friend in the movement is an anarcho-capitalist. You know, I think that's been, you know, pretty poetic for the movement up to this point. And he started screaming at him when they arrested the guy that was trying to keep us calm. He was like, why are you arresting him? Why are you arresting him? So they arrested him. And then by the end of it, there were 38 of us that had been arrested, and we were issued criminal trespass warnings and couldn't return to City Hall. And so, you know, that started the 38 exiles. And that was the core. Of course, the core members were the ones that made the stand. And then that left us with nothing but squatters that had, you know, were squatting the revolution. You know, the problematic non-participants were all that was left. Of course, none of them made a stand.
Yeah.
And they started keeping food from making it to the exiles, and they started stealing donations. And, you know, a lot of we were already having internal issues with these people. Like, a big portion of our core thought that they had a right to the movement. The other part felt that they did because they weren't participating, and that they were going to kill us off, and they did. They came after, the police came in that night on the grounds of what the problematic non-participants were doing.
Yeah.
That's why they came, and then of course they didn't arrest them, they arrested us. So, you know, we've had a lot of internal issues about that, but now just about everybody in Austin is on board with getting rid of these people. and they're currently strategizing to move to a new area. For the time being, I had to leave. You know, exile was getting too harsh because I didn't have a home in Austin like some of the other people did. I was at the forefront of the peacekeeping team, and I'd received multiple threats from people and trying to get them to stop doing drugs or get them to stop drinking. And I'm not exactly built in Sparta, you know. So, and then a good portion of our corps kept resisting me every time I would try to get rid of them. And then, you know, the final straw was one night this guy was smoking pot at General Assembly, and he'd already sexually assaulted one of our members before. And I confronted the guy, and I told him, you know, that he was going to have to take that elsewhere, and I was calm about it at first. And, you know, then he refused, and I told him, look, man, it's not really an option. Like, we need you to leave. You can't do that here. And then he threatened me. You know, I told him that if he didn't leave, we were going to have to report it to the authorities. And so he told me that, you know, if I didn't get out of his face, he would have to report to the authorities him getting violent on me. And so I turned around to our General Assembly that was going on, and I told them what was happening, and that this guy was threatening me, that he was smoking pot. They attacked me. And they told me that I needed to leave. And that I was a big boy and I could handle it without the police. And so at that point I realized our internal issues are too big, and there's nothing that I can contribute there for now.